Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to our April 1st deep dive with DUI. So some of you are just jumping on, so that's great. Just as a reminder, for those of you who are watching this via the live stream on Facebook, it's also being streamed at the same time on Zoom, where it's a little bit more of an interactive presentation. Whole session's kind of more interactive. Throughout the presentation, just a couple reminders. You can actually type in your questions, send them to me as the admin, moderator, host, whatever you want to call it. And we will ask those questions during the presentation, and Matt will hopefully be able to answer most of those. No trick questions. Also, if you post them or questions on Facebook, we'll also monitor that channel and watch the be able to address those at the same time. And after the presentation, it's going to be immediately replayable again on Facebook, and eventually it will be added to our YouTube channel. And I post a link in our chat window for that, so you can always log back in there and watch them, and watch some of the older presentations or previous presentations at the same time. So with that, I'd just like to welcome Matt to our show this week. And hang on, I need to add Matt. There we go. So there's Matt. Make sure you're unmuted. So you should see both of us on the screen. So welcome. I'm excited about our presenter today. He is from Canada. So just in case you haven't figured this out, people, I'm from Minnesota. So Canada is just like the neighbors right north of me. So so he's going to be talking about how do we call this? The greatest lakes and the greatest shipwrecks. So sadly, growing up in the Midwest, Minnesota, I have never dove in the Great Lakes. So this is actually kind of like on my bucket list. So that's why Matt's here. He's going to like get me all excited about diving the Great Lakes. And hopefully some of you out there watching are the same thing. You're all curious about this. So Matt is part of Dan's Dive Shop in, was it St. Catherine?
Yep.
Ontario. And they are right on that border, right there by that famous waterfall area. Anyways, I'm not going to go into this too much more. I'd just like to introduce Matt. First off, just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're a technical diver, so just give a brief history, and then we'll switch this over, and you can take over and go with the show. Okay?
Will do. All right. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so my name is Matt. I dive instructor, wreck diver, cave diver, technical instructor. I've been diving since I was about 8 years old. Younger than that, technically, but I did my first open water dive at 8, and I got into it a lot more into my teen years, and basically started spending my summers diving around Lake Erie and cutting my teeth on a lot of the wrecks out around there, and then started kind of migrating my way out around the other lakes. And since then, it's been a fun road, and I've got to see a lot of really cool places. And there's a few places maybe in this little talk today that I haven't dove yet that maybe I was supposed to dove last year. Thanks, COVID. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's kind of put a wrinkle in a lot of people's plans. So I'm hoping that, not that we haven't enjoyed local diving in San Diego, and hopefully in your area you've been able to do the local diving, but I know that as people are getting the vaccine, there's more and more travel going on, but I don't want people to lose the roots of they can dive in their local areas.
Yeah. No, it's been a godsend for us, I think, in a lot of ways, because people that weren't maybe spending their family vacation money on trips for everybody to go south somewhere, a lot of them were reinvesting it into gear and training over the past year, and people have been making more of an emotional and a financial commitment to more local diving as well. So it's been kind of good. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of just start off, I guess, with some of the shipwrecks around our area here, and kind of migrate our way a little bit more around the lakes, and kind of finish out in Lake Superior and see where we end up in between. So
Yep, sounds good. And it's awesome. I totally recognize the Canadian accent. So
yeah, I don't quite have a Newfie one yet, so a Newfoundlander one, but we'll see. Keep working on that too. Cool. So yeah, I guess what I'll do is I guess I'll share my screen and we'll do a portion. There we go. And we should
got some social media thing going on. There we go. Awesome.
All right. So are we screen sharing now? I can't really see it. Screen share. You're now screen sharing.
Yep, we see the screen. It looks good.
Perfect. So same picture as behind me. Just coincidence. So this was taken in Michigan a couple years ago by Becky Kagan Shot. So thanks for the great picture. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the Great Lakes stories, some of the reasons that we have these wrecks, maybe some isolated incidents and some different things. We're going to talk about what maybe drives us to want to explore these shipwrecks a little more, some popular sites, maybe some skills and some techniques to help you guys improve your diving. And of course, maybe some upcoming trips that you can get onto as well. So this is the Great Lakes region for those that haven't seen it before. So I'm pretty much right down around here in Lake Ontario. And I'm also lucky that we're only 30 minutes away from Lake Erie. So we're bordered by basically two Great Lakes, which is cool. All right. So, and this was a portrait of one of the wrecks up in Lake Huron when we were diving around, up around Alpena last 2 summers ago now, I guess. So I'm going to stop my share, go back to this, and yeah, starting to swing this this whole video thing. All right, cool. So the Great Lakes, I mean, there's a lot of shipwrecks out there. Some estimate 6,000 plus, some estimate close to 8,000 shipwrecks. A lot of them started, 1800s era. And of course, as international trade increased, so did the traffic across the lakes, whether it's Canada to the US or whether it's from Europe, bringing grain and supplies, coal, other essentials, or things like that to all the North American communities and vice versa, us exporting products out to there. They theorize that over 30,000 mariners have lost their lives in these lakes over the years. And there's a range of causes, from collisions to storms to running aground, hitting a shoal, ships just taking on water and ice at the really cold parts of the season. There's even one of my favorite wrecks that may have had a captain falling asleep at the wheel and he cut in a little too close to a shoal. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. Of course, back in the day,
Recent events or anything like that.
What was that?
That's not related to anything like our recent events.
Okay. So yeah, but yeah, so they didn't have a lot of instrumentation back then. That was definitely, not everybody had radios, definitely not in the 1800s, but lack of GPSs, nautical charts, things like that. So we got a lot of really interesting time capsules that have sank around our lakes because of this. And of course, the later the season, not the dive season, the later the regular season goes, the weather gets worse as well. The winds get climbing higher, faster, and November is often the worst month for these disasters. So 1 November, they had 12 ships die, sink, whatever, during what they called the White Hurricane, which took over 250 people's lives. From November 7th to November 12th, 1913. And basically they called it the Big Blow. And there was basically 4 days of frozen ice hurricane conditions, 36-foot high waves, winds over 100 miles an hour. And one of those shipwrecks that perished was a local wreck for us off of Grand Bend in Lake Huron called the Wexford. The Wexford is 250 feet long, 40 feet wide, and it's a pretty attainable dive for anybody with advanced certification and beyond, 75 feet max depth. November 10th, 1975, the Great Lakes had its most famous shipwreck sinking. Anybody know anything about Great Lakes history, what shipwreck that might have been?
Yeah, so wait, I see Mike with his hands up. Go ahead and
That would be the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Yeah,
Well, the song made it famous all over the place. Oh, Gordy Lightfoot there, eh?
yeah, for sure. So yeah, no, that's bit out of most people's range. I know one guy that's drove it, but that's about it. But yeah, 729-foot long ship that basically rode its way down to the bottom of Lake Superior, just outside of Thunder Bay, off of Sault Ste. Marie area, Thunder Bay area. So yeah, so each ship has a very unique story. It has a specific history or a legacy, so to speak. And one of the things that I like about shipwrecks is no two shipwrecks are the same. So it's not like maybe you go to the same quarry all the time and see the same, weeds and whatnot. Same little piles of silt. Every shipwreck's got a different personality. So, no two collisions look the same or any of that sort of stuff. So to me, it's always a kind of like a new chapter to a book, I guess my logbook. And so I get to kind of say, yeah, hey, we did that one today. We're going to do that one again because it's got so many more spots you want to check out. And the great thing about these wrecks is the fact that they last a lot longer in this cold, fresh water than what you would have, say, down south. So a lot of the shipwrecks here in the Great Lakes are going to last hundreds and hundreds of years because of this cold, fresh water that preserves them, whether they're wood or they're steel. Whereas if you guys have done a lot of saltwater diving, you notice that maybe, say, after 50 years, 60 years or sooner, some of those shipwrecks start to look remarkably different than they would have. And then, of course, you start diving wrecks, say, from 100 years ago, and they look even completely different than what they used to look as well. A lot of the wrecks that are in the Great Lakes, aside from obvious damage of maybe, collisions and things like that, a lot of them look like they could be raised and sailed. So we're pretty fortunate to have these, like I said, these time capsules that allow us to kind of go back to our roots and our heritages. It's estimated that freshwater shipwrecks last at least 5 times longer in freshwater than in saltwater. Saltwater is rich with electrolytes, which strips the wood. It strips the electrons from the iron, so it decays the steel shipwrecks very quickly. Freshwater has bacteria that can destroy the wooden shipwrecks, but we're pretty lucky.
is that like the zebra mussels and stuff doing the damage, or is it?
Zebra mussels do a little bit of damage, not so much to the wreck as much as the weight of the mussels, which can put a lot of undue stress onto the wood and cause collapses and things like that. So we'll get into the zebra mussels actually the next slide. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But we'll watch diver impact is one of the biggest concerns for wreck diving as well. Same as it would be if you guys were on a beautiful reef, right? You don't want some diver hitting the wreck or dropping an anchor onto a pristine reef, and any kind of damage is not good, right? So we want to basically implement zero impact techniques, which are kind of the best option for us as divers. So zebra mussels have been a blessing and a curse to us in some respects. So I'm a second generation dive shop owner. My father, Dan, is a Canadian diving guy who started the shop in 1974, started diving before that. And back in the day, they would go out lake diving and they would have, 5 feet, 10 feet visibility. And they would say, oh, hey, visibility is great today. We had a whole 10 feet of visibility. And basically in the mid 1980s, these filter feeding mussels were introduced by European freighters who were dumping their ballast tanks into the freshwater lakes. And by the mid 90s, basically these zebra mussels, which are like these razor sharp little mussels, started running rampant through the Great Lakes. And one of the byproducts of that was they started basically cleaning up the lakes, making them, really better visibility, more light starting to basically penetrate deeper. The water got maybe a tiny bit warmer, but they are very fast growing. And the nuisance part of it is, of course, they can block water pipes and ship hulls, propellers, they can choke out a lot of natural mussels, and they can choke out some of the fish life as well, especially fish that like to maybe put their eggs inside rock clusters and things like that. So it's really interesting. They're razor sharp, so you don't want to touch them with your bare hands. You don't want to touch them with your dry gloves. You don't want to touch them with your expensive wet gloves. They'll slice through your gear pretty quickly, suits, gloves, hands, etc. When you walk the beaches, sometimes after a really big windstorm with a lot of waves, you'll see sometimes just oceans of mussels washing up on the shoreline, which is kind of cool as well. But the blessing is that they've really helped increase our shipwreck accessibility. I'm just going to try to maximize this again, and we'll go back to screen share and portion of the screen and share. All right, so this is a little video I actually shot on Saturday. We were out diving the Tiller Wreck, which is a pre-1850s wooden schooner that you'll see in a bit, off of Port Dalhousie here in St. Catharines, Ontario. And we were last there, I want to say October, November, and there definitely wasn't this little snorkel there, and there definitely wasn't this pair of fins there, or the single fin. So after just a few months of being down under the lake, you see this wonderful snorkel starting to get zebra mussels growing on it. And then I go up to the mooring and I see the block there, and there's a fin on it with zebra mussels growing on it. So, and of course you can see around, it looks like pretty clear water. So it was a good day. We had a lot of fun out there. So I kind of thought that that was a neat example for you guys to kind of see the effect of the zebra mussels. All right. So what motivates us to wreck dive? I think for a lot of us, there's a lot of different individual factors. Sometimes it's just a dive site you hear about your whole life that maybe fuels the motivation of, hey, I want to get down and get certified so I can go dive the Edmund Fitzgerald, or, you know, go do something like that. It could be other divers' input saying, hey, you should go to this spot, you should go to that spot. And of course, as divers, every diver likes to tell stories. That's kind of what we're good at. So getting to share stories about places to dive is always a really good possibility, finding out some new sites that may interest you guys as well. And then of course, there's some great books, magazines, and then of course, YouTube and social media nowadays. Everything's just so much more accessible. So it's very cool. My motivation for getting more into wreck diving, I did my first really good wreck when I was about 15 years old off of Lake Erie. But what even got me more interested in wreck diving was a picture of a freighter on the wall of a dive boat when we were diving in Tobermory, a ship called the Northwind. And I'll show you guys that when we get to Lake Huron. So it's pretty cool. So each shipwreck is unique. Like I said, there's history. There's also the allure of just visiting new destinations and exploring maybe new environments. A lot of people come here to Niagara, for example, to go do drift diving in the Niagara River, or they go up to Sarnia, up in Sarnia, Blue Water Bridge area to go drift diving through there. So drift diving could be an attraction for people, or in our case, shipwreck diving here in the Great Lakes. So it's really neat to just be as well versed in different aspects of diving as you can in different diving environments. As you start exploring shipwrecks, you start off with what's called external survey, or external basically studying of the wreck, where you maybe make notes, and you start to kind of put a plan together of where the most interesting spots on that wreck are, and where you want to maybe spend a little bit more time the next time you dive it. You may notice access points into the shipwreck that may inspire you to want to get some proper training before you start exploring into the shipwrecks. Being an overhead environment, you don't want to be in there without the right equipment and the right training. But you can make mental and written notes of where you want to explore on that shipwreck next time. A lot of the wrecks that are shallower are a little bit more beaten up due to basically wave action, just overall weather patterns and things like that can move and shift around the boards of some of these wrecks and things. So the shallower wrecks are a little bit more beaten up. As you start getting deeper, you start noticing that these wrecks start to really resemble their former selves a lot more. And of course, as you get into deeper diving, the wrecks get maybe bigger and even more intact. And of course, as you get into technical diving, the wrecks get even more intact from there. Some people get into wreck diving because they want to take beautiful pictures. People maybe want to take photographs of even the artifacts. Being that we're in freshwater, we can't take artifacts from these wrecks. They're time capsules. These artifacts down there are part of what makes these wrecks so special. Whereas in the ocean, a lot of the people, wreck hunting, wreck scavenging is is kind of a badge of honor, seeing how many plates you can get and things like that. So here it's about sharing the story of the ship a little more and taking pictures, and basically leaving everything for everybody else to see. There's expeditions, sometimes to further away, more remote destinations. There's still shipwrecks being found. So shipwreck hunting is a popular hobby for certain people. And of course, surveying these shipwrecks as well is also a really nice thing. So the first thing I guess we'll talk about, first lake I guess we'll talk about is Lake Erie. Lake Erie has at least 2,000 shipwrecks. Obviously most
Slides
of
on
them
this? I'm not sure.
unknown. Yeah, I've got a, yeah.
Okay, because you're on non-slide mode.
All right, we're in there. Come on. Perfect.
Okay. Just real quick on the artifacts, have you found anything significant as far as like historically, like, wow, that's we didn't know that type of thing?
We've found like old muskets from like the War of 1812 and things like that. There's a couple 1812 wrecks, not the ones you guys are thinking of for those that know which ones I'm talking about. But there are a couple 1812 wrecks, one of them in the Niagara River, for example, had some muskets on it and things like that. We had a diver that worked at the Fort Erie fort at the time. So he actually turned those into the fort as just cool keepsakes for the fort to preserve and show off.
Awesome.
Myself personally, I haven't really found anything of notable value. I found Robin, like Batman and Robin once. That may or may not have ended up in my pocket. I wouldn't consider him indigenous to an 1800s era shipwreck. But yeah, that's the coolest thing I found. But you see a lot of really neat things. I mean, these massive masts and windlasses and just lifeboats and lifeboat davits and just the whole story. I just love it. So it's very cool. So Lake Erie here is 30 minutes away for me anyway. There's more shipwrecks in a 40 square mile area of Lake Erie than the entire Bermuda Triangle, which only has like 50 wrecks and 20 planes. Lake Erie spans 241 miles from Ohio to the end of Lake Erie, which is Fort Erie, Ontario, at the mouth of the Niagara River. So this map here has basically a few of the popular sites from Erie Wrecks East, which is a book that we love. And of course, it also opened up international shipping through all the Great Lakes when they built the Welland Canal. Because Lake Ontario and Lake Erie were so close, there was no way to actually get from one to the other. So what they decided to do is make a canal to basically allow passageway basically from the Atlantic Ocean through the St. Lawrence, through Lake Ontario and into Lake Erie. So we're in a pretty historical area when it comes to that as well. All right. So as a teenager, I started diving, like I said, started diving out in Lake Erie. Pretty much every weekend I was out on a boat somewhere. The visibility when I started diving out there got better with the zebra mussels. Lake Erie being a little shallower is also a little warmer during peak season. So say like May to October, you're looking at maybe 40 degrees at the start of the season to around 54 degrees on some of the mid-depth kind of 70, 80 foot wrecks, and then a little bit colder, deeper from there.
Said that was the warm temperatures?
On the bottom, yeah. You might hit 70 on the surface on a good day, maybe a little bit more even. But yeah, it's a little warmer, but also maybe not as clear of a lake as some of the other areas that we dive as well. So, 30 to 60 feet is average visibility. We don't get a lot better than say 60 feet visibility. Out of Port Colborne, we have a couple of dozen good wrecks in a variety of wreck depths, ranges from around 20 to 130 feet of depth. As you go out to the US side, out of Barcelona, New York, they have a great charter boat out there, basically the Southwind with Osprey. Great dive operation. And they have a lot of good wrecks that are a little bit more intact, a little bigger, a little deeper. And they hit some of the shipwrecks off of Long Point as well, which is on the Canadian side. Off Long Point, you have a lot of great wrecks, and that's the deepest part of Lake Erie. You can hit 205 feet of depth out off of Long Point. So it's a great spot to dive. There's also some shore diving sites available around the lakes as well. So your most popular Canadian Lake Erie, I guess, ports of departure for diving would be Port Colborne, Port Maitland, and Long Point, which is out of Port Dover there. All right, then I've got a little video that I will show you guys of CB Benson. So share screen again, portion of screen. All right, so these are some of the sites as well. Raleigh, the Tonawanda, the Finch, the Cheney, lots of different wrecks. And I've got a whole listing on our website with detailed briefings and some drawings of some of these wrecks. And then this is the...
And I'll post some of the links that Matt's going to share later on too in the chat window, so everyone has those.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get this guy working. All right, so I'll turn the music off there. So yes, this is the CB Benson. So you can see basically we're starting off with the lifeboat davits, we're starting off with the ship's wheel, and there's a capstan there. So this is probably the most notable thing that people see on the wreck. Very sunny day this day, so there's a lot of light coming down, which maybe throws it off a little bit. But it's a 3-masted barkentine schooner resting in a max depth of 80 feet of water. You guys can probably read as good as I can. Better read them. But yeah, the ship's wheel, you can see how thick the zebra mussels are on it, eh? Very, very thick. And then you start hitting some of the masts, which are broken. We were told that the masts used to stick up and they were actually taken down as a navigational hazard back in the day. You'll notice too, with the zebra mussels, we also have other invasive species. These things running around the bottom are called gobies, and they're basically a nuisance. But it's a great ship, lots to see on the wreck, lots of dead eyes. You got the lifeboat davits, you've got capstans, you got a nice looking bow. The wreck hit stern first. So you notice the bow is up a lot higher and the stern is almost level with the lake bottom, actually below the lake bottom, which is cool. So we can speed her up a little bit. So you get some of the decking, some of the flooring. And then we'll get into one of the mast holds, maybe.
And so since these are all real wrecks, unlike, some of us on the coast, they have artificial wrecks where they're cleaned. So if you go inside these, I assume you need to be safe because they're not cleaned.
Nope. Yeah, there's a lot of, especially on the freighters now, you're starting to get a lot of hanging lights and things like that. Wires are starting to fall through the ceilings and that now, so you can get your valves caught in them if you're on back mounted equipment. But the divers are having fun. It's a great little dive for people that are just, out of the advanced course. And of course, very silty bottom, so using a good fitting technique is always appreciated. We'll get more into that later too. We'll get up to some dead eyes and stuff on here. So the dead eyes, they're very popular with allowing the ropes to go through and basically running all the pulleys and the masts and things. There's a sail boom there. So when I first started diving these wrecks, I had no idea what I was looking at because I'd only seen wrecks in pictures and they didn't have zebra mussels all growing on them. So when I first started lake diving out here, I thought they were basically covered in like giant clumps of puffed wheat. And that was kind of what they reminded me of. And then somehow between my teenage years and my 20s, I guess, I started being able to identify what was what, and everything just started making a little bit more sense. So, but very cool dive. Lots of stuff to see.
Have you done like a lot of like historic research on some of these?
The ones that really interested me, I have, yeah. Like the Carlingford and the Brunswick, for example, was a fun one because they collided and sank 2 miles apart, and they were also 2 of my first wrecks I ever dove out there. So, but there's a lot of wrecks with a lot of stories for sure. All right. So yes, that was that.
So do they have like mooring balls on these wrecks, or do people?
They have lines on them, so we go down, we'll float them and put a jug on them, or we have a society as well, Save Ontario Shipwrecks, that has buoys with basically a sonar visible piece of metal that basically keeps the ships away from running over them and that, which is cool. Um,
And probably helps people dropping their anchors right onto the deck.
yeah, exactly. I mean, back in the day, that's maybe sometimes how people used to find the wrecks. You hear stories about, oh, drag an anchor at a certain depth till we hit something. Then we go down and look at it, and it's just like, awesome. But it worked. We found a few more wrecks, I guess. But we also do a lot of shot line descents now and that too. So if they have to anchor, we try to anchor off of the wreck, drop a shot line, like a weighted line on the wreck, and then we'll try to find a mooring line and send it up from there. These are all the wrecks off of Long Point. So anything in the point here, these ones are all kind of shallow, 75 to 100 feet till you hit Browns Brothers. Browns Brothers and around here is your deepest parts of the lake, around 200 feet here max. And then you start getting in kind of the 150s, 160s, 170s, right around there, then back to 150 and shallower as we go back towards New York.
Wow,
So,
that's a lot of wrecks.
it is, yeah. And it's, like I said, just a small, like 40 square mile area. So yeah, very fortunate to have gotten to dive most of those. As we keep going, from Lake Erie across the way into the canal and over to Lake Ontario, we start basically hitting the wrecks where I live, which is in St. Catharines. Now, and by wrecks, I mean wreck singular. We only have one diveable wreck that we can actually legally dive, which is the Tiller wreck. But Lake Ontario, one of the nice things about it, it's a deeper lake. The water's clearer, the visibility is better. The water's a little cooler. So we have the Tiller, which is a pre-1850s wooden schooner. And as you can see from the pictures, it's beautiful. It's all intact. I mean, you can jump into the cargo holds here, swim through, come out another cargo hold. It's all open. We call it the Tiller wreck because it has an 11-foot long wooden tiller on the rudder back before ships had steering wheels. So that's how we know the lineage of it is roughly pre-1850, because 1850 and beyond, every shipwreck started having a ship's wheel. So we're very lucky to have that wreck. We have two other ones that we're not allowed to dive because they're grave sites, which are the 1812 warships of the Hamilton and the Scourge in 286 feet of water. There's also 3 scuttled shallow shore dives off of Lake Street here in St. Catharines. 3 little wrecks that were sank intentionally, scuttled intentionally. They're good for snorkelers and just people want to go and just see if they can find them as a shore dive. And then basically we start making our way north towards Toronto. So it takes us about 100 kilometers around the lake to get to it, which Toronto is about 40 miles across, or 40 kilometers across. So 100 kilometer drive, 40 kilometer sail. But anyway, we drive over to Oakville, and they have a barge, and they have the Birmingham crane, which is a construction crane and trailer that sank in the storm once. When you get to Toronto, they have 3 wrecks not too far out of Humber Bay, in the Merrill, the Sligo, and the Lyman Davis. Merrill and Sligo are both wooden wrecks, as is the Davis. Davis was scuttled. That was burned and sank in 130 feet of water. But the nice thing about Lake Ontario's visibility is typically 60 feet on kind of an average day, 100 feet on a good day. And it usually doesn't get worse than that, provided you're deep enough. You got to get below the thermocline, and the thermocline's usually at usually around 60 feet. So the shallower wrecks are still usually pretty clear, pretty good, but the deeper wrecks are usually a little bit more consistently awesome.
Is there a better time of the year to dive for visibility?
So right now the algae hasn't started to bloom, so you don't have that greenish hue to the water that you normally would get. But with the thermocline, what's neat is you could have warm moving water basically till you hit 60 feet. And it's green as the algae gets in there. But then you hit the thermocline and you hit 40-degree temperature water, and it's crystal clear below the thermocline. So it just depends how much greenery you want, kind of topside. But yeah, I would say early and late season are always best for visibility. We've done dives even in like December and January, where we're diving on the tiller and you can look upwards and you can see the dive boat. So that's pretty cool. I've seen divers swimming on their back to the ladder and things like that before. So always kind of neat. Let's see. You also have Port Hope, Ontario, which has another wreck. And then we start making our way east towards Kingston, Picton, those areas. So Prince Edward County has a lot of great wrecks. They have a couple of deep technical schooners in that 160 to 170 range. There's a lot of wrecks in and around this area as well. Average depth is probably around 100 feet. It's quite good. Here's a list of some of the wrecks that we dive there quite frequently.
So eventually getting your technical diving certs would be beneficial.
It can definitely help if it's what interests people. Absolutely. But there's a lot of stuff to keep you busy, even in that 80 to 100 foot range or shallower. There's dozens and dozens of wrecks, even, above 30 feet even. But yeah, the popular wrecks, I would say, on Eastern Lake Ontario out of Picton would be the City of Sheboygan and the Katie Eccles. I stole this link from Becky because she said I could. Becky takes phenomenal pictures. If you're not familiar with Becky of Liquid Productions work, Becky Kagan Shot.
Yeah, she does take some really good photos.
She's phenomenal. So basically, this is the Katie Eccles. You see all the rigging and anchor chains and stuff all mashed up on the bow there. Bowsprit, beautiful rudder. And they have cool stuff to see. You have canned peaches, preserved peaches that are like 200 years old. And there's some pottery and there's kerosene lamps. There's, you'll see the pump on the ship, some zebra mussels, and again, the cascading anchor chains again. So very fortunate to have, wrecks like that around for sure. You can also hit the City of Sheboygan. One of our divers made this picture. He's a genius when it comes to photography and Lightroom. So this is Matthew and his website. Yeah, you can see beautiful bow on the City of Sheboygan here, capstan. You got a beautiful windlass behind here with the anchor chains, and kind of the backwards aft view up to the bow, looking forward. Lots more stuff to see there. And then of course, a nice shot of the Deadeye. I thought that was a really good one to check out as well. So yeah, there's some good diving out around there. You would launch out of Wapoose, Ontario. My friend Helen has a great dive boat, and there's info about her at the end of this presentation as well, if you want to check her stuff out. You keep moving east, you hit Kingston. Kingston has about 50 wrecks in around their area as well, and a bunch on the American side as well. And there's a ton of wrecks out off Oswego, New York, and surrounding areas there too. Wrecks that I haven't even dove yet. So hoping to make a trip out there again when the borders open and we get to go hang out. But there's over 50 known shipwrecks, including 1985, what became the first Canadian artificial reef, which was the Wolf Islander 2 car ferry, which they sank. There's also, for the guys that are into deep diving and Trimix and all that stuff, there's 3 awesome freighters that were scuttled off of the Lafarge Bath cement plant in 250 feet of water. And of course, if you launch out of Kingston, you could hit the City of Sheboygan, Katie Eccles, the Picton wrecks that we previously just showed as well. There's just a nice pic that my friend Jim took of me inside the Wolf Islander 2. You can notice the rusticles are all lit up. Just your bubbles, if nobody's been in there for a while, will start to percolate down if you're on open circuit. So you get kind of a neat little rustical haze sometimes hanging out there, and it's really neat. All right. As you start making your way even further east, you get basically a little bit out of the lake, and basically Lake Ontario joins up with the Thousand Islands region, which most people are pretty familiar with. Thousand Islands has a lot of freighters, a lot of really cool wrecks. And basically it begins in Gananoque and it flows basically towards Montreal, where you start to basically hit brackish water and flows out into the St. Lawrence River and joins the Atlantic Ocean. So we call it the Canadian Caribbean here in Canada. I don't know if you guys in the US call it the US Caribbean, but it's a great spot. If you guys want to see freighters and lighthouses and castles, beautiful, like picturesque castles and scenery, sunsets, and literally 1,000 islands or so, which is cool too. It's definitely a wreck diving haven for both Canada and the US sites. There are some currents there. So it's got some great drift diving, but the drift diving currents can also be a little bit challenging if you're diving a wreck and you're basically descending against the current. You really want to hold on to the lines, or some of them even have chains that you can pull yourself around if the currents are really nasty, because they don't want you obviously pulling and gliding on the shipwreck itself, being that they're fragile wrecks. So strong currents, great diving. Some of the sites are in shipping lanes as well. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to surface in a shipping lane and back up transportation of the entire St. Lawrence shipping lanes, which can put you in jail and get you a nice fine for a couple of days. I mean, if you got money to burn, why not? But yeah, there's 16 popular wrecks on the US and Canadian side. And then there's also some really deep walls. It's a great spot to just jump in and explore, especially if you have scooters. A lot of the guys will jump in on the walls and they'll scooter up and down the St. Lawrence, just checking out different things. One of my favorite wrecks up there is the Royer Jaudry. It's a big 600-foot long Algoma Laker, and I've got that as a little screenshot there. So this wreck, remember I was talking about the captain that may or may not have fallen asleep at the wheel. This wreck sank in 1974. Cut a little bit too close into one of the shoals. Put about a 14-foot gash in the side of the starboard side, just below almost where the Royer Jaudry's name is, a little bit aft towards that. And basically they started steaming as fast as they could to the Coast Guard station, where basically it rode the wall down there to max depth of 240 feet. So you hit the top of the wreck at 150, you're at the wheelhouse at about 200 feet. Then you're out on the cranes at around 220 and then beyond. And then the stern is awesome too. So it's a great wreck, and definitely you could spend years diving it and only see maybe 10-15% of it. Because I've been diving it for about 20 years now, and I've seen a lot of the bow, I've seen a lot midship, and I've only been out to the stern once. So it's a really cool wreck. All right, let's see if I can share this down better. There we go. All right. So some of the dive sites in Thousand Islands that you may or may not be familiar with are listed here as well. So they have a lot of good sites, basically 30 feet to 100 feet on average, some beyond that. And of course, there's 4 good technical dives as well in the Jaudry, the Okantu, the JB King, and the Vickery. So spectacular diving. And for people that don't want to have to put on a dry suit and gloves and hoods and all that sort of stuff, we've seen people diving into the summer in a shorty. I've never dove it wet, but you know, I'm kind of a suck that way, I guess. But it's just a great place to go, and it's a great way to kind of cut your teeth, do some warm water, and then kind of get yourself some more experience in some different environments from there. So it's fantastic. All right, how we doing? Everybody still with us?
Yep. No, we're doing good.
All right, cool. So as we start to make our way basically away from Lake Ontario, away from Lake Erie, we start going north, and we start making our way up to Georgian Bay. And Georgian Bay is beautiful. You have basically some of the bluest water anywhere. The alkalinity is higher, and there's a lot of minerals in the water, and the limestone filters the water. So you get this really, really beautiful blue effect. And you have open water wrecks in this kind of water up in Penetanguishene. They have 5 stellar wrecks in 12 to 60 feet max depth out of the wrecks there. We do open water trips out there every year, and we even complete open water checkouts there sometimes. So it's great. We're gifted to have Tobermory, which is the dive capital of Canada. It basically was one of the first national marine parks for protection and conservation. It has 22 protected sites around the area. And they have some sites that are recreational, and they have some technical dives as well, which they don't like to necessarily promote. But they have some great walls, just stunning walls. They're just sheer big cutouts, just beautiful. You can go from basically 20 feet down to 300, 350 feet. And there's a lot less zebra mussels, as you can see from the photograph here. So this is basically the wrecks that they have around their area. There's a picture of me dropping down on either Bad Neighbor Rock or Dufferin Wall. I can't really tell, but it looks like Bad Neighbor to me because it's a little bit more of a drop straight down. And then of course they have the Niagara Two Shipwreck, which is beautiful. That was an artificial reef, sank in 1998. And some more pictures just to whet your guys' palate a little bit too. So again, diver descending into the Niagara Two. Top right's me just swimming on the starboard side of the Force City, just past the boilers. The picture I took of basically the stern section, the light was really nice and looked good. And then of course, some other stuff. You got the bow on the Arabia. So nice big windlass with anchor chains. You can see those anchor chains cascading in the next picture to the right here. And they have a big bowsprit that goes all the way out. It's just a beautiful ship. The Wetmore, awesome dive in like 20 feet of water. Beautiful anchor. And then there's me just swimming through the stern of Force City as well. And then there's some other nice pictures. The Alice G tug. There's 3 tugs off the shore in the town of Tobermory. This one's the furthest out, but it's pretty and it's a great night dive or day dive. Swimming back, you can go a little deeper, hit a wall in 40 feet to 60 feet and cruise back on the wall. There's a nicer picture of the windlass and then picture of the wheelhouse of the Niagara Two Shipwreck as well. And you can see the zebra mussels are just starting to fill in around the windows and just along the roof line here. So not a lot of zebra mussels yet, but yet it's always had stunning visibility. I think part of the allure to Tobermory is that it was really clear and beautiful before the zebra mussels, and the zebra mussels have only enhanced the conditions of Tobermory ever since. Back in the day, we used to dive the Forest City, and at 70 feet, the lights would go out, it'd be pitch black. And I remember a couple of years later diving it, and I could basically look all the way up the wreck. The wreck basically starts at 60 feet and bottoms out at 150. And I could see all the way up the wreck that day. And there's days where, you can just see the sunlight just shimmering down all the way down the wreck. So that's a lot of fun. All right. Georgian Bay also has had a couple of new discoveries. In the last 2 years, they have found 2 new wrecks, the J.H. Jones and the Manitou, neither of which I've dove, but Chris Cole's book is great. He has a lot of great information. He's a great historian, and he helped find both the Jones and the Manitou. So what we can do is go for a little tour of the Jones, and I can show you guys. These are right off of the CBC News. So a couple guys just decided to jump in the boat one day, and look what they found. So here's this beautiful wreck, 170 feet of water. And I love this. This just looks stunning. So this is the stuff that gets us excited. It's new, it's fresh, and it's something that just inspires people to want to get out and do it. So, really excited to go and actually dive these wrecks this year.
So did they do research knowing that there's ships, or boats sunk, and they just try to go find them based on the last log?
Correct. Yeah. So if you Google London, Ontario, Manitou, interview Chris Cole, he pretty much tells you where the ship is without giving you the exact coordinates. So I've had a couple of our guys find it based on that. But he basically, with the Manitou, I guess they were trying to return back to a lighthouse, and they were lining up right in line with the lighthouse, and they just didn't make it. But the Manitou is a cool one as well. Come on, Manitou, open up. It's the same thing, ship lost in Georgian Bay. This is CTV News. Come on, you. And so again, you can see that this ship hit stern first. It's all beaten up on the back. The bow doesn't even look like it's touching the bottom. But it's got a stunning wheelhouse. That's what it used to look like ahead of time. It's got a really cool old car in it. And that's the stunning wheelhouse. So beautiful wrecks. So definitely.
Yeah, there's something about finding things that below water that makes them that much more interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's one wreck out here that we've been looking for a long time, called the Oriental, and we thought we found it one year, but we didn't. I found a lot of rocks, and but on a depth sounder, they kind of looked enough that it could have been structure. So maybe one day we'll find that one too. It's supposed to be at about 80 feet of water, not too far off Port Dalhousie here. So that'll be kind of one of my projects at some point. I spelled shipwrecks wrong. There we go. Editing while I'm on the fly. All right, cool. So we leave Georgian Bay, we leave Tobermory, we start making our way up to Lake Huron. And Lake Huron is phenomenal. It's a little bit warmer than Tobermory by about 5 degrees typically. Has a lot more zebra mussels, but has a lot bigger and better wrecks. Lake Huron, I would have to say, is probably one of my favorite places to dive. And there's a lot of wrecks in any depth range to really kind of whet your appetite. So you have the North Channel shipwrecks. You also have, we talked about the Wexford earlier, the one off of Grand Bend near London, Ontario. But basically the Northwind is something that is a very special wreck to me. This was the picture that I mentioned earlier that got me kind of thinking more about wreck diving. So the Wexford looks very similar to the Northwind. Northwind's maybe 75 feet longer, but the Wexford looked very similar to this as well. So the Wexford's one off Grand Bend. When you get to North Channel Lake Huron, you have about 27 dive sites up and around that area, and nobody really dives up there. They have the Emma Thompson, which is a pretty schooner. You got the India, which is decent. But the gem up there is really the Northwind, and they have the Edward Buckley, which I forgot to write down too. Edward Buckley is a really nice wooden steamer as well. There's no charters up there, so you have to be boat sufficient. Bring your boat, bring your captain, whatever. The closest dive shop, Sudbury, which is a couple hours away from Little Current, Ontario. They do have a local dive club, the Dolphin Club. They have a compressor if you guys needed gas, or you could bring, enough tanks to get you through the weekend. But the Northwind was basically 300 feet long and 41 feet wide, 75 to 140 feet of depth. And we'll go on a little tour of it too. All right. So they have basically cargo holds that you can drop down and into. There's nothing in them. The ship sank when it had dropped its cargo off. The zebra mussels are starting to become a little bit more prevalent out here, but there are still spots where there's not a lot of zebra mussels. As you go over here, you start dropping into the engine room, and you basically drop on top of the boilers, not literally, figuratively. So again, you can see paint. You can see the tops of the boilers. There's a fan and some other stuff there. As you make your way to the right, you end up into basically the pipe fitting room. So you can see a lot of the tools. I guess some of the rings there. You can see on the wall further back where some of the tools used to be hanging, because they're basically scarred into the wood. Lots of wrenches and stuff. And they've kind of got that like melted Titanic rustical sort of effect happening there, right? So that's very cool. This wall's collapsed in and it takes you further in towards where the crew's and captain's quarters are. So that's a neat little spot. You walk down through a catwalk, not literally again, swim down through the catwalk, down a stairway into a catwalk, and you come out into where all the machinery is. And again, we're first divers in there this day, and it still had a lot of suspended particles and stuff. So you really have to watch your buoyancy, your trim, your fin techniques. You want to run a line into the wreck, which you'll see in some of these frames. We do have lines, but you see generators, flywheels, just an awesome wreck, and thoroughly enjoy this one. So this wreck basically ruined me and got me into technical diving, because it's just, there's so much of it outside, but then when you get onto the inside of it, it really just opened up more interesting experiences for me. And of course, got me wanting to train up a little bit more and get a little bit of fancier equipment and be able to spend a little bit more time down there. You can see light bulbs still up in the fixtures. Some of the lights in this room are starting to, the wires are starting to collapse now. So, you just got to watch where you're going. And then you'll see even they have freshwater rinsing for your hands. Doesn't look too clean though. And then they have a drill press here. This drill press even still has the drill bit in it. So it's really cool wreck. Then you go up out of the steps into the unknown from there. Again, no zebra mussels on the doorways. Lots of silt. The toilet's seen better days, but Yeah, it's a great dive. Off the stern, the wreck hit stern first, and it created ripples of clay. And you get eels and stuff living in these clay banks. That's what the holes are there. Skylight to the galley, so you can get into the kitchen. That's the engine room. Shutters again. Exhaust vents. There's a coal bunker, and then beautiful topside scenery. So Northern Ontario is gorgeous. If you've never been up north, it's really cool. As you keep basically going through Lake Huron, you start to make your way around to the US side to Alpena. They have the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, which was, I think it was the first marine park. There's 200 shipwrecks around the bay, and they have a protected area of 4,300 square miles. The Great Lakes Heritage Museum is phenomenal, definitely worth the tour. And they have dive sites that are good for snorkeling, for open water divers, for advanced divers, and of course, technical diving in that as well. So they have basically their little chart here, and lots of shipwrecks within the chart. We took a lot of pictures. Their shipwreck gallery, I mean, that's a really giant, taller than myself, poster of shipwrecks and titles, and they have descriptions of the types of wrecks, so schooners, freighters, barges, bulk freighters and beyond. They had some artifacts that they had liberated, and it's just a really, really great spot. So if you ever get a chance to go to Alpena, definitely want to take the time to go visit these guys. It's very, very nice. This is a list of the Alpena dive sites around the area. The Monrovia, you could easily spend a week diving the Monrovia. It's like 500 feet long and 130-ish feet of water. And the Pubic is great. We did a few of these other ones too. I think we did the Grecian, and we did a couple of them. Can't remember them all. That's apparently why you're supposed to keep a logbook, a more up-to-date logbook. As you start making your way further, you get around and over to Port Austin, Michigan. Port Austin is one of my favorite places ever. The shipwreck here actually was basically that's the Albany. The Albany and the Philadelphia collided. Philadelphia still lays upright, and it looks like it sliced right through the bow of the Albany. So basically, the aft section of the Albany is still very much intact, and the bow is, not so intact. Definitely seen better days. But they have a lot of deeper wrecks out here, a lot of nice Trimix dives, 190 footers, 180 footers, 200 footers. You have schooners, you have paddle wheelers. The Detroit sidewheel paddle wheeler is phenomenal. They have a twin pair of ferries. One was driving the other in for repairs. One, it basically took on water and sank and pulled the other one down with it. You also have the Daniel J Morrell, which is one of the biggest wrecks that have dove. It's phenomenal. The bow, well, the ship actually is split in two in a storm in November, split in half, and basically the stern did a full circle and it was coming towards the bow, and then it just kind of kept passing it, and it sank about 12 miles apart from each other. So it's a pretty spectacular dive. There's a couple stills I've got of it. And then you have the Dunderberg, and the Dunderberg to me was probably one of the prettiest schooners I've ever dove. It's a 3-masted schooner in 180 feet of water. It got struck on the port side, and this is the video of the Dunderberg. Volume off. So very similar to the Arabia in Tobermory, you have a really nice bowsprit. You have the anchor chains. It's a very similar build, if not the same shipbuilder. It looks exactly the same to me. When I look at the Arabia and I look at this is like a perfectly intact, deeper Arabia with maybe a few more zebra mussels. But the ship is virtually intact. And then, of course, you got the mast holes, and you can see the fallen mast. And it's still got some of the dead eyes and pulleys, sail booms, ladders. Another mast that's a little bit more upright, but it broken off halfway up as well. But to see the detail, to see the supports, that hold the mast in place, and just the whole effect of this wreck was really special. The structurally sound design of it also was really neat. Seeing all the supports, how it's got everything just perfectly propped up and well preserved, 200 years later. Um, just a beautiful wreck. As we get to the stern, you start to see the point of impact off the stern on the port side. Rudder's not connected. It's just kind of hanging. And then going inside, this was my favorite part, was just doing swim throughs in here. Just seeing, again, the architecture, the woodwork of how they made this. This was just a really solid, I don't know what they call, like a meat and potatoes kind of shipwreck. Centerboard was beautiful. Just a gorgeous wreck. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one. And I could have spent probably another day on it as well. All right.
Most of these trips that you're taking, there's like, are there dive charters, or are you hiring like individual boats, or are these private boats, or how?
A little bit of everything. Yeah, this was actually a trip I did with Becky Kagan. Becky Kagan shot, and she was running a couple of her boats, one from Milwaukee, then Captain Brian, who lives around there. So the boats basically congregated in and took us out for the week there. I've been out with them since, doing my own trips. It's just a fantastic place. Some of the places do have actual dive charters and dive shops that can help service the needs of everybody. And some of the other ones are more of just a boat only kind of place. This one's nice because there is a dive shop now in Grindstone as well, which is the town nearby here. And yeah, it's a little bit less remote, I would say, than some of the other places we go. The most notable feature of the whole wreck and the best photo op, we don't know if it's a platypus or if it's an alligator. What do you guys think? But that's the most famous part of the Dunderberg, is the figurehead on the bow here. So this is a phenomenal wreck. Definitely one that'll get you guys really stoked. The Dana J Morrell, huge freighter. Like I said, this is the one that's split in half. The Twin Ferries. Like I said, anytime you see a lifeboat underwater, it's probably not a good sign. Probably means that not everybody made it off there, or they really crowded on the other lifeboat. But you'll see a lot of lifeboats next to fallen shipwrecks. This was inside the Albany. Becky got a couple shots of me here, just surveying the tools in the tool room here, and then checking out. Basically, there's a full view of the stern of the Albany there. So some really great diving out there. And she runs trips out there. I run trips out there. Captain Brian, who has Black Dog Charters, he runs trips frequently as well if you guys have a group. I was supposed to do Presqu'île last year. With COVID, that didn't happen. So I totally stole Brian's website. He said, it's okay, don't worry. For the Presqu'île part of the today. So we'll give that a little click. We'll check out Brian's links. So Presqu'île. So you have a lot of great wrecks out there. Becky's pictures really are phenomenal as well. So she's got talent. There's a lot of other good photographers too, but I seem to see her stuff a lot. But there's lots of good diving out here. They did an article for X-Ray Magazine, another lifeboat. So you can definitely read up around that. Like I said, the X-Ray Magazine was the feature here, the number 79. So you could Google that and definitely give that a read. We also have Straits of Mackinac, which I also have here. Straits of Mackinac is basically where Lake Michigan and Lake Huron start to kind of converge and meet. And you have a lot of wrecks out here. Straits is nice because most of the wrecks are in recreational limits. You've got the Cedarville in 100 feet of water. I think the deepest wreck is the Eber Ward at 140 feet, and that's to the bottom. And a lot of stuff in between. So if you haven't been out to the Straits yet, you can definitely get out there with Captain Brian. Captain Yitka runs charters out there too. Both their links are out here. And there's other charter operators in that as well. Getting out to the upper peninsula of Lake Huron, you start kind of getting up to basically where Lake Superior and Lake Michigan start to kind of almost converge. Then you start to get out to Whitefish Point. Whitefish Point, I kind of forgot all about until I started working on this, because I booked trips out there years ago. They got canceled, and then I never actually got out there. But they have a shipwreck museum with a lot of good information about those wrecks. And then, of course, you get up into Lake Michigan. Captain Yika's got a great website, shipwreckexplorers.com. She runs charters out of Michigan area. So if you guys are around, Wisconsin, Chicago, any of those areas, she can hit any of the wrecks up there. And she also hits the wrecks out in like the Straits and the Lake Huron stuff. So she's a great resource. Good diver too. Then you start getting up into Lake Superior. And so you get out of Whitefish Point area, and you start kind of making your way deeper into Lake Superior and beyond out towards Thunder Bay, Ontario. So Whitefish Bay is also a protected area with lots of great diving. You have Isle Royale, which is very popular, right in the heart of Lake Superior. They have a lot of bulk freighters, package freighters, paddle wheelers, passenger steamers, and more. Lake Superior is the coldest lake. It's the deepest lake. So you're looking at 36 degrees temperature most days on the bottom, below 20 feet. The surface temps probably don't get much above 50 degrees. So Jack may or may not have let the cat out of the bag that there's a new blue heat undersuit coming out from DUI. So if you need a heated suit, bear that in mind before you go to Lake Superior. Great wrecks out there. And then, of course, Thunder Bay, Ontario. Thunder Bay is most known for wreck diving on the Gunilda. The Gunilda is a beautiful luxury yacht that sank in the 1930s. It used to be owned by one of the richest men of the U.S. in those days. He was so rich that he didn't want to pay a navigator to navigate through the shoals. May or may not have hit a shoal and got the wreck stuck on the shoal. And when they tried to salvage it off the shoal, it rode the shoal down to 260 to 280 feet of water. Jacques Cousteau calls it the best shipwreck he's ever seen, one of the most beautiful and intact shipwrecks. And the guy had so much money when it was floating that he painted it with 24 karat gold trim. So the paint actually has gold in it. So you have the Gunilda, you have the Judge Hart. There's a whaleback barge in 60 to 90 feet of water. I've never dove a whaleback. Really excited to kind of go there and check it out. So there's a lot of good wrecks out there as well. Oh, and I think I had a charter link for that too, for those that were interested. So this is what the Gunilda looks like. So no zebra mussels at all on Lake Superior on this side. Beautiful ship's bell, beautiful ship's wheel. The Grand Salon has tables and chairs and a piano in it. And then you can see basically the wheel. You see,
It's incredible. It just looks like some dust fell on it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a great looking wreck. So yeah, this was, I can't move my share up. So By the Bay Adventures, they're who are doing charters out there now. And there's a link to their website as well. So very cool. So there's a lot of wrecks, not enough time to do them. I mean, I've been wreck diving out in there for, I don't know, 25-ish years or so now. So I haven't seen it all. So it's exciting for me to get out there and still want to explore as well. And that's what I love about diving. There's always a next deepest, or there's always a kind of a next, always a next longest. There's always something kind of as a project for us to get out and do. We're going to talk about basically how to improve your wreck diving. That'll be kind of the next topic we talk about. And basically, local shipwrecks can be a little bit more technical in nature. You're basically carrying more equipment diving here in the Great Lakes. You're not diving a shorty and probably no lead. You're diving a full wetsuit or a dry suit. You're maybe wearing more lead, more, bigger tanks. You may have to be in a little bit better shape to carry around some of that gear as well. So what you want to do is you want to get practice. You want to gain more experience in some of these colder, quarries or lakes, wrecks, easy spots, maybe, to get used to all the gear. A lot of people aren't used to wearing the hoods, the gloves. diving in maybe less than 100 feet visibility or water that's not 80 degrees. So some of the traditional training methods and equipment configurations may fail to prepare the average diver for maybe the rigors of shipwreck diving here in the lakes. So the biggest thing that I can impress upon you guys is buoyancy. Buoyancy, buoyancy, buoyancy. Have really good buoyancy and be able to stay in one spot and not basically hit the bottom. No standing, no kneeling, basically maintaining proper trim, being able to keep your body within 10 degrees midline of horizontal, knees up, fins up, very much like a free fall skydiver is kind of the look we're going for. So you don't want to kind of be these guys. Sorry if that is you guys. Don't hate me. This is kind of what you want to look like right here. And a few of the training agencies have borrowed this slide from me a few times. I always lie and say that it's the same divers in both pictures, but it's not. But you want to have basically, good comfort. You want to have a good positive attitude. For wreck diving, you want to have better than average dive planning skills. You can't just, assume your computer is going to do it all for you. You want to know basically if you're going to swim X number of feet down the wreck at this depth, how long it's going to take you to swim out and back and make sure you've got enough gas to do that. You want to maybe learn from maybe other people's accidents. It might help kind of keep you guys in a better frame of mind and maybe keep your ego in check a little bit too. By using accident analysis, we can learn skills of prevention and maybe not make the same mistakes that other people make when they're diving. You always want to dive with people that you can trust, like a team, and basically have good environmental and situational awareness as well. You want to be able to maintain your depth plus or minus 2 feet. If you're on a safety stop or a decompression stop, because as you're breathing in, your body floats up a little bit. As you exhale, body floats down a little bit. Now, if you're in a rebreather, different ball game. You want to have proper exposure protection. I know a guy in this video that works for a really great dry suit company, and they make the best fitting dry suits in the world. So, talk to Jack or me about some dry suits. And you should have good rescue techniques as well. Things do happen, so having a good head about you and good abilities to act in an emergency is always important. And you can also benefit from maybe a little bit more of a modern gear configuration than what some of the training agencies may tend to favor as well. Maybe utilizing a buoyancy compensator that keeps you more horizontal rather than more vertical. Maybe people put too much weight around their hips, and when they stop kicking, they go vertical. Fins are often, fluttering towards the bottom of the wreck. If you can stay in a more of a back flotation system like a back plate, it's going to lift your bum up. It's going to keep you in that nice solid horizontal position a little bit better, and you can redistribute more weight behind you above your lungs as well. Wreck divers also utilize a little bit more equipment. They have redundant pieces of gear, maybe like a set of double tanks or a pony bottle in case their primary regulator fails. You can switch out to a bailout. So you've got some good options there as well. And to, of course, help you get those better skills. Oops, I have to do a full screen share. And basic desktop 1, screen share. All right, so let's see if this goes into full frame. All right, is this share in full frame, Jack? Hopefully. All right. So having some basic foundational skills like modifying your fin kicks. Going flutter kicking through a shipwreck is going to create a lot of silt. So by utilizing an anti-silting kick, you can improve your wreck diving by doing a modified frog kick. Modified frog kick's a little bit more efficient, and it's an easier means of propulsion. You'll be able to cut your air consumption down a little bit lower, and you're hardly exerting. It's just very easy, very efficient. It's just a great way to kick. So you've got modified frog kicks. Modified flutter kick. So modified frog kick is great if you're just, kind of in a nice big open area, but you may get into a hallway inside a shipwreck that's a little bit tighter to get through. And maybe the only option you've got in this case is to do a modified flutter. With a modified flutter kick, you're going to keep your knees up, your fins up. Your fins are always up at the highest point of your body. And basically it saves you having to extend your feet out and hit off of the shipwreck. So a modified frog kick is a great skill that you guys can use. Helicopter turns, you can turn without using your hands, which is really beneficial. If you're in a shipwreck, your hands are lower than the rest of your body. So doing this is going to silt out the bottom as well. So being able to turn with your fins allows you to turn right, turn left, turn any direction, and you're not disturbing the bottom in any way at all. And then of course, doing a back fin, reverse finning, reverse frog kick, back finning. You hear it called lots of different things. You ever dive somewhere there's maybe a slight current and you and your dive buddy start to kind of come together like a tractor beam, and it's like this magic tractor beam just pulling you guys closer together? The last thing you want to do is push your dive buddy up out of the way. So what you guys can do is you can reverse frog kick away from each other, and you can stay in position if there's a little bit of a current so you guys don't bump into each other. You can also back out of a hallway or back out of a cave or any kind of an overhead without having to push off of that fragile shipwreck, that fragile reef, or that fragile cave.
Yeah, and this really helps too for photographers, you know, because their hands are going to be busy doing stuff. And so having that buoyancy and the fin technique lets them get the better shot.
I had one photographer take intro to tech with me just because he wanted to learn how to backfin, and it was great. And then of course, now, you know, you get to learn how to blow an SMB as well. A lot of the training agencies are getting on board with deploying surface markers. Places like Cozumel, for example, they insist, you know, the divers have an SMB so you can blow it and they pick you up, and it saves you having to get decapitated by a boat. Up here, it's nice too, because an SMB could be several feet tall. You're a lot more visible than, you know, a little human head sticking up out of the water. So it's pretty good too. So this is kind of a compilation of closed circuit and open circuit SMB deployments. So you reach out, you grab your bag, usually in your pocket. Whether you assemble your SMB in your reel ahead of time or not is really up to the individual. I always kind of have my guys assemble it in front of me, but this one came pre-assembled apparently. So this is an open circuit bag, which means that the bottom's basically accessible for putting gas into it. So you open it up, you run your spool through it, clip off your bolt snap on your harness. And with an open circuit bag, what you're going to do is you're going to open the bag up, you're going to tilt to the left-hand side, and you're going to exhale with your gas into the bag. And the reason you do that is because if you've ever dove in cold water, trying to do that with your octopus, you're going to freeze up your regulator. So as he turns his head, it's going to exhale, 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 2 to 3 good breaths. Hold the spool away from you and you let her go. Once the spool's up, you can take your double ender, you can lock in your depth, and you can just ride out a nice safety stop or a deco stop, just letting the tides or the waves just kind of roll you back and forth. Chris does the same thing here with a closed circuit bag. So pulls it out of his pocket, pulls it out, and you can disconnect your BCD or your dry suit inflator, and you can hook that up into the bag. The bag doesn't connect onto it. It'll just disconnect as soon as it's full, and it'll shoot basically the bag up. So you have to be really quick with your hands and make sure that you do good with your spool. You just hold it nice and open like that, let her go.
Yeah, that one fills it up instantly.
Yeah. And then basically double ender, lock your reel off, and enjoy your safety stop. So definitely some good skills for you guys.
Yeah, so basically more skills that you have, the better your wreck diving will be. Well, I mean, all your diving will be. And there's always something to learn and skills to practice. I mean, that's, you know, one of the things I do, I go, oh, it's nothing to see today. I'm like, oh, well, I'm diving. It's practice doing something.
No, exactly. Yeah, and then of course, once you're out and you've got the skills down, you can put all the elements together, and you can just look really good and efficient, just swimming around.
So definitely incorporating the line skills like that you do use in cave and stuff at the same time.
Yeah, this was in Florida during a cavern class, but just having that ability to kind of maintain your positioning with your fins and just your control is really, really good. The next thing we're going to talk about is a successful training path to really help you guys get to be the best yous in the water that you can. So to be a good diver, I mean, you probably want to do your open water, good start. You should probably do your nitrox. Nitrox, especially for wreck diving, is going to get you a little bit more time down there, a little bit more oxygen in your body. It's going to help you basically on and off gas a little bit more inert gas more efficiently as well. You should definitely do your dry suit training because you'll be more comfortable in the dry suit. If you're not diving dry, the average dry suit diving season average wetsuit diving season for wetsuit divers usually about 3 months, sort of June, July, August, maybe September. The average dry suit diver season is 12 months out of the year. So our dry suit divers generally don't stop diving unless, they have to, because the ice comes, maybe they can't get into the water and maybe they're always certified. You should do your advanced because you can dive deeper. You can expand your experience into different avenues of diving. I mentioned earlier about rescue and first aid training. You never know when you have to maybe administer oxygen to somebody or have to do CPR. Hopefully you don't ever have to, but I've had to do it a couple times and it's not always fun. And then of course there's foundational skills course that'll help teach you the fitting techniques, the SMB deployments. Several agencies offer foundational skills training or fundamental style training. Now ATDI, GUE, there's some great brands that have some really great training. But what you want to do is you want to find a good instructor that you can learn from. Preferably, I would say somebody that is a more technically oriented cave diver and maybe a technical wreck diver if you want to get into wreck diving to a higher level as well. So you can learn a lot from technical divers as even an open water diver. A lot of my instructors at the shop are all cave divers actually, which is cool. So technical divers and cave divers can definitely teach you a lot. And of course, as you want to keep fulfilling your enjoyment and enjoying yourselves, start pursuing technical and cave training if that's of interest to you guys as well, and technical wreck training as well. But rather than being a professional student, just get out there and get diving, be as experienced as you can, and just dive to your highest level as much as you can. Don't get complacent and don't get cocky. There's a lot of good divers out there, and there's always somebody that's going to be able to probably teach you something a little bit more as well. And I'm still learning at this level too. Portion of screen, back to partial share. Upcoming trips. If you guys are interested in doing some trips, these are some popular areas that we dive a lot of. Bikini Atoll is not exactly in the Great Lakes. It may or may not be in Micronesia, but I had to throw that out there. With COVID, we may have a cancellation or two available for that one. For 2022, May of 2022, I believe it is. We do Lake Erie and Lake Ontario charters frequently. We're in Thousand Islands, usually May and October. The conditions are always best then, less algae and better visibility. Tobermory, usually July, September, but we're up there frequently as well. We do a lot of East Coast diving as well. Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Quebec, some great diving out there. Oh, again, not Great Lakes. We're supposed to be in Presqu'île, Michigan for August 1st weekend. If for whatever reason we don't get over because the borders are still closed, I already told Captain Brian that he can start making a waiting list. So if you guys want to get out and do some good diving, get out there and do her. Picton, Thunder Bay. And then of course, we do Mexico stuff, warm water stuff. We have a lot of fun. So we're always out doing something. Oops, wrong way.
Yeah, I noticed that, I follow you guys on Facebook and Instagram. You're always posting stuff where you guys are going and what you guys have done. So that's awesome.
We like to stay busy because truthfully, if we're not diving, we're probably a little bit bored. And so it's nice to just be able to get out and do something fun. And, so yeah. So basically that's all I got for you today, guys. So we've talked about a bunch of stuff, a little bit about Great Lakes stories and heritage type things, some of the reasons that the shipwrecks are there. We've talked about the allure of shipwrecks, what kind of gets us driving out to dive all these sites around the area. We've talked about some of the popular sites, how to improve, and some of our upcoming trips. So I guess some closing thoughts would be to challenge yourself to be the best version of yourselves above and below the water as you can. Get out and practice and just be a good diver. So don't be complacent, keep training, keep challenging yourself, and get involved in more local diving. And of course, you can follow me on social media at DiveSith and at Dan's Dive Shop on Instagram. So I guess, yeah, we can turn it over to some questions. If you guys have any questions.
Well, I'm posting some of the links right now in the chat area, so everyone has those. They'll also be available on the Facebook link, so you can get there. Well, you gave me a lot of links.
Yes, there are a ton of links. I can show
Um,
it here too. If you guys want to screenshot these, do a good screenshot. They're not clickable. The ones Jack's going to be posting are clickable because I gave him 120 different links.
Yeah, it's okay. It's part of my job. So there was a question about what kind of lights you like using for wreck diving.
Sure. So preferably something that's a little bit bigger, brighter, and rechargeable. And the reason for that is to have the burn time. A lot of the smaller lights, they don't cast either a really bright beam or they're all flood and not a lot of spot. If you could have a beam that's focusable, it's going to definitely allow you to maybe expand it out for video and make it nice and tight for getting into those really silty areas that might be a little bit, what do you call it? Too backscatterish
Right.
with a really flood oriented light.
So I don't know if there's a question about doing side mountain wreck diving. I don't know if that's in your wheelhouse.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I love side mount. What I love it for is shore diving and cave diving. It's not the easiest off of a boat, but it can definitely get you into some spots in wrecks that people may or may not have been. Northwind video 1 of me was filmed a few years ago on side mount, where I actually get into the chain locker. The chain locker was like this big, not much bigger. So unclipping tanks, dropping in, reclipping and going. I got the first video that they'd ever got of inside the chain locker. I think it's a good tool. Like anything else, you just have to gauge whether it's the right tool for the right dive or for yourselves. So the side mount is definitely great.
Yeah, I do side mount, and obviously cave diving side mount is awesome. I use it for wreck diving, in San Diego,
Yeah.
assuming that it's not like a big swell surf day type of thing, because handling the multiple bottles on a boat is kind of
That's the worst part. And if you have a surface current or something too, trying to put them on in the water can be a little bit harder. That's one thing you'll notice a lot of my pictures have people in doubles or rebreathers. And the reason for that is just because you stand them up, slide into them and splash. So it's, logistically a little easier to gear up sometimes. And not all the boats are the best dive setup that we dive off of. So a lot of the ones that I like to use are, but you just got to do what works. And if something's not working, you can always change it. So it's good.
I like the method of try everything. So at least I've experienced it. So another question is best shore dives in Lake Erie. I guess the north side is the question.
So in Lake Erie doesn't have a ton of shore dives in the lake itself, but they do have the Marengo, which is a good wreck. It's a bit of a surface swim. One of my divers told me it was maybe 1 kilometer or 2 that I made them swim to, but I don't think it was that bad. But you can hit a wreck, it's in 20 feet of water. It's pretty scattered, but it's still got some good features. There's a quarry right on the shore of Lake Erie that we dive a lot called Shirkston Quarry. It's a great quarry. It's a limestone quarry that basically stopped working as a quarry in 1913 or 14 when one of the pipes burst and it backflowed as a spring-fed quarry. And the workers came back and all of a sudden they had nowhere to work that day because their quarry was flooded. So we got Shirkston. We've got the Old Welland Canal in Welland, which has a number of sites. There's drift diving up and down the Niagara River, which is just kind of where Lake Erie kind of funnels into. So there is some good shore diving around the area. You can definitely get your appetite quite well satisfied there.
Okay, we'll start wrapping this up. I have one more question. So you talked a lot about zebra mussels and other critters, and I know there's in the Great Lakes growing up, there's the black shark, that everyone's so scared of. Today's not April 1st, right? So no, the question in reality is, what are some of the other kinds of fish, water life that you see in the areas?
Okay, so you see, one of the neat things about diving in the Great Lakes is you can see sturgeon. Sturgeon are big prehistoric fish that can be 8-9 feet long sometimes. You see them often in the Niagara River. You don't see them as much out in the lake as much anymore. They were really well fished back in the early 1900s for their oil. And then the population got scarce, and now they've started to rebound, which is good now that everybody's leaving them alone. You'll see a lot of muskie. You'll see some pike. You'll see a lot of bass, especially shallow. You'll see a lot of gobies on the wrecks, which are the invasive little guys that swim around the wrecks. You'll see the odd whitefish, or maybe the odd trout or something up in the northern sites. But truthfully, I don't see a lot of fish when I dive the wrecks. I don't know if the bubbles scare them away, the boat scares them away, or what it is, but I think they're more solitary creatures that don't like divers.
Okay, so if I get you to stop sharing your screen now, that'd be great.
Sure. All right.
Thanks.
Share. Perfect.
So thank you for hang on. Okay, now I don't know what I'm doing. There we go. Thank you for coming and presenting today. I already wanted to go there and go diving. Now you've added a complexity to my bucket list, which is, wow, there's so many things to go and dive. So it's going to have to come down to picking and choosing when the time comes. But so, yeah, thank you for giving this presentation, all the tips, hints, and just showing us around the whole thing, and taking the time out of your day to do this. This is awesome.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm glad it was of interest to have you guys all tune in, and I appreciate the opportunity, Jack. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So no, this is awesome. So I'm reading messages here. So ignore me. But anyways, this was awesome. Just remind everybody, this is going to be available on Facebook right away. And also on our YouTube channel. So you can always come back and look at some of those details when you're planning that trip to go out and see Matt and all these cool dive locations. So again, thanks everybody. We'll see you again really soon. Next month, we are going to be presenting on the coral reef restoration project that's going on in Florida. It's with a group called, wait, is it? Oh, sorry, I'm confused. It's actually, it's going to be another, no, it's, I don't know. It's the Florida Reef thing. With Force Blue, they're replanting and restoring the reefs in Florida. So it'll be awesome. So anyways, come check us out first Thursday of each month at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So thanks everyone. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks guys. Safe diving.
And
All right. Beauty. All right, mister. Thanks again.
yep, thanks for coming out. And I will leave this screen running for a little bit for you guys. Also, if you have any questions, I can answer them need be. But thanks for coming, guys.